Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for losing my passport to avoid babysitting on my vacation? I, 17 female, still live at home. My sister, 28, is married and has 2 kids, 5 and 3. Whenever she comes over to visit my parents and her stick me with the kids. This wouldn't be a problem except she doesn't visit for an evening. She will come for a week. And for that week I'm an unpaid nanny. If we go out to a restaurant I have to entertain them because my mom needs to talk to my sister and brother-in-law. You get the picture. My parents decided that since this was my last summer before I became an adult we would be going to Disneyland to celebrate my graduation. I asked who was going and they said it was just the 3 of us. But when we got to the airport my sister and her family were there. Strangely enough, they were also going to Disneyland. I went into my backpack and grabbed my passport. I put it in my sock. When we got to the international security I couldn't find it. We looked everywhere. I had to Uber home and I missed my flight. Oh well. I get to stay home by myself for a week of peace and quiet. My parents were very mad at me for losing my passport. The money they spent on my flight and entrance was wasted. Darn. My mom and sister have both been posting about how hard it is to be at Disneyland with 2 little ones. They both posted that I ruined the vacation by being so thoughtless. My dad says he knows why I did and he understands. But he says I should have let him know so he didn't waste money. He said he would have gone along with my ruse. I feel bad about wasting money but I have been to Disneyland before. And I will go again later by myself or with friends. Next story. Am I the a-hole for freaking out when my wife locked our son out of the house at night after he drank alcohol? I, 39 male, have a 16-year-old son with my wife, 40 years old. This incident happened a few days ago and she's still mad at me. I was on a work trip so my wife was at home with our son. When I got back, I found out that he had been hanging out with his friends and they convinced him to drink some beer and he got a little drunk. I'm not saying what he did was right, but him and I had a talk about it and it's fine. The problem is that when he came home and my wife found out she was furious and kicked him out and refused to let him back in until the morning. He was begging her to let him, but she wouldn't. When I found out I was furious. Regardless of what he did, she made a slightly drunk teenager stay outside by himself at night. Something very bad could have happened to him. We had a huge argument over it. I asked her how the hell she thought that was okay. She just kept saying that it's our son's fault for drinking alcohol. My wife isn't really talking to me now and my son isn't talking to his mom. I feel like I'm in the right, but maybe I'm not. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to cook for my wife anymore after she ate 3 of my meal prepped meals? In my household my wife doesn't cook. She sucks at it and it's just easier on our taste buds if I cook for us. Earlier this year, we both decided that it was time for us to get back in shape. I decided to research some macro and calorie-friendly cooking recipes and got big into meal prepping. My wife stuck with it for a few weeks but ultimately decided to quit. Luckily, this wasn't too much of an issue for me. She's a nurse and frequently works much later than I do as my typical workday is from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. So I would make my meal prepped meals for the week on my off day and then I would make dinner like I did prior. When I meal prep, I make 6 days worth of 3 meals. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and just swap around lunch and dinner. Last week Thursday morning for work and planned on coming back Friday morning and stopping through home, grabbing anything I needed then heading into the office. This was known for weeks in advance, so I didn't spring this on my wife. I figured that she would be able to make sure she and our kid got dinner that night and breakfast that next morning. The next morning, I'm running late and drive through home looking for my last breakfast and lunch for the week and they're gone. I don't have time to ask my wife, nor do I want to wake her up early before her shift so I just go. I end up skipping breakfast and lunch. I get off of work and I'm starving and decide I'm just gonna eat dinner early and when I look for my dinner for that night, it's not there. This is what set me off. When my wife gets home I ask her what's up and then she admits to eating the meals. I tell her that I had portioned out food for an entire day and then she ate all of it in a single night. She said it was my fault as I didn't make anything for her and our kid to eat and I just left the meal prep things, so they had to eat those. We got into an argument and she told me I was being selfish. So now I decided that if I'm selfish for expecting her to feed herself for one night, I would just not cook anymore, as I'm doing a lot of work for a selfish person. For the past week, I made my meal prep meals and store them at work and let her figure out what she wants to do for dinner by herself. Of course, I still cook for our kid, but only one portion small enough for him to eat by himself. I told her I would keep this up and that she should learn to cook for herself if she's not happy about it. She told me that she's too tired when she comes home from work to cook and that I'm being incredibly petty. I think I'm justified and I'm pushing her to learn a life skill she should have by now. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my roommate that her anorexia is not my problem? We are both 23 female. It's been getting into the 90s where we live, so I've been turning on the AC when I get home. I also work a physically intense outdoor job, so I come home really sweaty and exhausted from the heat. The apartment will stay cool enough for me to fall asleep, but then later on I'll wake up in the middle of the night completely drenched in sweat. I'll then get up and find out that my roommate has been switching the AC off while I'm sleeping. This really upsets me because it's been making me really dehydrated and tired to begin with from not sleeping well, and it's been impacting my work. She's unemployed right now, so I thought she might have been hung up about the power bill. When I finally talked to her about it, I explained that I'm already very sensitive to heat to begin with, and that because we're fortunate enough to have AC, I want to enjoy it when I get home, especially after a long day at work, and that the heat is causing problems for me. I even offered to foot some of her share of the power bill if she was really that concerned about it. But then she said that she turns it off because the apartment gets too cold. I should add that our AC is set at 70 and has never been moved lower than that. I told her that she should just use some blankets or put a sweater on if it was really bothering her, because the heat is unbearable. She then countered by saying that because she's in recovery from anorexia, she's really sensitive to cold and that I'm not prioritizing her needs. I then responded by saying, I'm sympathetic to your situation, but that is your problem and not mine, and it is starting to have a negative impact on me, and we need to find some middle ground here, because I can't take off my skin when it gets too hot. She then got extremely upset and angry and told me that I was being ableist and insensitive. I'm kind of bothered by this, because I've also had struggles with eating disorders in the past. So am I the a-hole here? Next story. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my wife after she blew up my phone with calls because of a fire? Throwaway, because some of this made local news and I don't want it connecting back to me. I work in a place where we are not allowed to have personal electronics on us at all. No phones, no smartwatches, no pagers. I've been working here for about 6 months, so my wife knows this and understands that she should not try to contact me by my cell at work. Phones are dropped off in our lockers and I typically have mine on Do Not Disturb. Before this incident, my phone has never gone off in the locker before. Recently there was a pretty big fire at a secondary worksite that I do work at occasionally, but that day I was working at the main building. Local news covered the fire before I found out about it because again no electronics, plus the work we do isolates us a bit, so news travels pretty slowly. There were a few casualties, a lot of seriously injured folk. My wife had been watching the news from home and started freaking out, I guess. She called me 20 freaking times, which, and I did not know this was possible, overrode my D&D and my phone was ringing for a while in my locker. In the middle of my shift, I got called into my manager's office and was chewed out and written up for my phone making so much noise. They told me to go take care of whatever it was making my phone go off before I went back to work. I won't lie, when I saw those 20 missed calls from my wife, I was seriously pissed off. Like I said, she knows not to try to contact me directly, and a citation hurt my chances of getting a raise or promotion. I called her back and she was sobbing and asking me if I was okay. I said of course I was okay and asked what the F was wrong with her to call me so many times. She was still crying and started talking about the fire. After that I started half yelling at her about all the reasons it was dumb of her to call me. When I got home she was super upset with me. I apologized for yelling, but she refused to talk. She's been very chilly the past few days and sleeping in our daughter's room. I know it was not the best decision to yell at her, but I still think my anger justified. 1. She knows I don't work in the secondary worksite very often. 2. She knows that I can't be contacted directly and she could have just called the office. 3. 20 calls is absolutely insane. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for making my husband a vegan dinner even though he's completely against becoming one? I, 24 male, and my husband, 25 male, have been happily married for a little over a year now. We met through a mutual friend and he learned very quickly that I am a vegan. About a year after we met and got closer, we started dating. He had no issues with me being vegan, but made it very clear that I couldn't force him into being a vegan, which I respected. I haven't ever put him down for eating meat in front of me, as that is his choice. Each to their own. We even served both vegan and meat-inclusive food at our wedding to accommodate both of our families. Up till now, everything was great. However, recently I've been seeing a ton of vegan recipes on my Pinterest and decided I wanted to try making one for dinner. We don't usually end up getting to have fancy dinners at home as both of us work full-time, but I found some time today to cook something up. It was a recipe for pulled pork sandwiches, but the pork wasn't actually pork, instead it was jackfruit. He seemed a little stressed about work, but I showed him the surprise dinner, and that seemed to help his mood out. He ate it happily, and even complimented my cooking. But when he asked what was in it and when I told him it was a pulled pork sandwich with jackfruit as a meat alternative, he lashed out. He shouted, telling me that he made it clear he was staying a meat eater. I tried explaining that I wasn't trying to turn him into a vegan, but he just walked away then. This happened a few hours back, and now he's refusing to talk to me. I feel like I might be the a-hole for making him a vegan meal even though he'd made it extremely clear he wouldn't become one. Because even if it wasn't my intention to make him one, I still made a vegan dinner that passed off as one with meat in it. Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole because I ate early? We're on vacation with my husband's family. We got here Sunday afternoon, and I was hungry. I made food for myself and my son. My husband said to wait for his family so we could all have dinner together or maybe even go out. It was around 4 o'clock, and he was saying we'd eat at 7. I said I was hungry, and my son and I ate. After that, the three of us sat by the pool. His family arrived around 6, and everyone was hungry and wanted to go out to eat. I don't know if it was the traveling or what, but I was exhausted, so I said I was too tired and would go to bed early. My son stayed home with me because he wasn't hungry and wanted to stay. I woke up early this morning, and I made tea and sat by the pool while my son played. When my sister-in-law woke up, she came out to the pool and told me off for eating early, not going to dinner and being so standoffish. She said everyone wanted to see me and my son, and I was being such a B-word. I said I was tired from traveling. She said if I forced myself to stay awake, I'd be on the same schedule as everyone else, but since I went to bed early and woke up early, I was going to have the same excuse tonight. She also told me off for not making breakfast when I was the first to wake up, but I didn't know when everyone was going to wake up, and no one wants cold breakfast. She just rolled her eyes and walked away. I feel like everyone's been standoffish to me all morning, and I'm wondering if I should apologize. Was I an a-hole? I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel or posts.